Well, hello, friends. It's Jeff, and thanks for joining me for this edition of Members Video Weekly. Today is a special day in our country, and not for good reason. 21 years ago, we all know the story of 9/11, and obviously the damage, the carnage, the loss of fallen heroes and everyday people is something we'll never forget. I know I made that promise 21 years ago, and I intend to keep it, and I know so many others do as well. I wanted to take a moment today and veer just a little bit from some of the things I share with you on vision, identity, purpose, community, trust, role, your impact, what's your story, and take a look at 9/11 maybe from an additional perspective. Nothing changes the story that we are well familiar with and that we know, but I think it's really important that we remember important things. And what I mean by that is when we look at the day that this all happened, this crazy, horrible day, the night fell, and there were people not only at ground zero who were coming alongside each other, didn't even know each other, but they were coming alongside each other. They didn't care if they were Republican or Democrat or how tall they were, if they were a certain color, or who they were. They had a mission in mind to save other people. And I was thinking earlier today, how strange is it that so many years later, so many of us in the fire system, across fire systems and fire stations all across the country, and I've been in quite a few of them, this is a constant and pressing issue that when we get lost in the everyday nonsense of just trying to manage our volunteer or career lives, or we look for some little level of power, or maybe it's for good and well intentions we're doing things. Maybe we're pushing the buttons for the right reasons, trying to get people to respond and do what they said they would do. But all of those things pale in light of what happened on 9/11. And for those of us in the fire system community, and certainly for you who are first responders, we never know when the next one's coming. We never know when we have to count on the people that we work with, the people that we live with, the people that matter to us. And it doesn't matter how big your fire station is or your EMS rescue squad. It doesn't matter how small it is. It doesn't matter if you're serving 7 days a week, 24/7, as some volunteer stations are still doing. But at the same time, it doesn't matter if you're running 1 day a week. What you're doing is actually serving the community in a moment when, you've heard this a million times, when they need it most. And I'll share this with you. If you ever came across an accident or a wreck, something bad before you were in as a member, I'll bet I could ask you about that event. I'll bet I could ask you about the accident, and you could tell me the direction the wheels were pointing when the car was upside down. You could tell me the color of the shirt somebody was wearing that had little bit of blood and glass and everything else on it. You could tell me what their eye color was. You could tell me what it was to go in and maybe save somebody in a burning barn or whatever that might look like, no matter how small or how large. But it's funny that once we get inside, somehow everything changes. We begin to think it's a social club or it's a totem pole, which I've said a million times in other places. Totem poles don't exist. Every single one of us have intrinsic value. But we fail to recognize it sometimes, and I'm calling it out. Sometimes I think it's insecurity. It's hard to recognize somebody else who may have their thing together when, I know for me, I look at my closet, it's not full of skeletons. It's full of failures and things I thought I could do differently. And we look at all of these things, and so we never give people the benefit of the doubt. We never trust people. We never decide that what we want is worth yielding sometimes for not only the greater good in that metaphorical quote, but really the people that we're really trying to serve. And so what I wanted to do today is really just share off the top of my head here and to just remind you that what happened on 9/11, obviously with its horror and the misery and the chaos, there's not a thing we could do about that moment. But what we can do today, 21 years later, is remember not only the heroes and the innocent and the faces of the fallen, but we can actually remember that we're here for a very, very important reason in the fire system and in the rescue squads and even in law enforcement. And if you're volunteer or your career, we really need to drop the drama. We really need to come together and begin acting like the adults and the people that are leaders that we are. And if you've heard any of my other videos, you know that every one of us is a leader somewhere. It doesn't matter if you're brand new in the fire station, you're a leader because you have the ability to influence somebody. If your giftings are different than everybody else, and every one of us have a fingerprint that no one else has, you are important and you matter. And we need to make room for all of us. And those, as you've heard me say a couple times, that want to continue the drama, want to continue the belittling or whatever it might be, you know, basically they're just dead weight in the fire station. They'll find their way out as more of you ignite and decide that it's time to really decide, are you in this? Are you all in until you're all out? And so today, no matter where you are in the world, whoever you're serving with, I want to remind you just something that for me is life-changing. I think of Todd Beamer so much this time of year. The fact that he knew what was going to happen by and large, we believe. And there were people on the airplane that became his team. They had a mission to do. They carried it out. They didn't sit there and decide who got to go first or any of the other nonsense we put up with in meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting. Ladies and gentlemen, I am no pope here. I am not the one that can pontificate because I've got it all together. The truth is I don't have it all together, but it's all of us realizing that we don't is where the victory comes from if we want to get to the promised land. We're here for the people that truly need us. When somebody's injured, somebody's in deep, deep, deep trouble, the only thing that matters is that we respond and that we're ready when we respond. So I want to leave you with that today. And obviously ask you to continue to pray for the families of those affected by 9/11. And until next week, this is Jeff with Members Video Weekly.